Hello, IZ viewers. On the phone with us via Skype, a pleasure and an honor to have Professor Donna Halper of Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Professor Halper, how are you doing today?
Right now, sitting in my messy office in Quincy, Massachusetts, which is about 20 minutes from Cambridge.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. A pleasure and an honor to have you with us.
Glad we could hook this up. I was hoping we'd be able to do it.
Yeah, we've been working on this for quite a while this whole summer, so I'm very honored to have us on here. And
this is the problem with
on behalf,
busy people.
Yes, and just get started really quickly. Why don't we go ahead and start letting our viewers know how did you get your start in radio, and give us a little hint of what the early days of radio for you were like.
Well, let's see. First they invented radio, and then when I was a kid, I loved radio, as did many kids back in the 50s and 60s, and I suppose there's even still some kids today that love radio. I hope there are still kids that love radio. In the 50s, it was still considered traditional and typical for girls to marry right out of high school. There were some girls that went on to college, but usually just to find a husband, or so the myth went. Or you could go to study teaching or nursing or secretarial work. And I couldn't see any of that. I knew I didn't want to get married out of high school, and I sure knew I didn't want to be a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary. No offense to any of those occupations, it just wasn't for me. But there were no role models and no options, really. So when I would listen to the radio, I really felt like those people, they were having a great time. They were entertaining people. They were making people feel better. That's what I wanted. And I particularly loved a couple of the DJs that I do not love them like I wanted to marry them. I love them like I wanted to be them. And so one DJ, and I've talked about this elsewhere, so it's nothing new, but one DJ that I particularly liked was Arnie Ginsberg. And Arnie was on the radio at a station called WMEX. But the thing that made it unique was he talked like this. He had this very, like he did not have a radio voice. And I said to myself, my God, that's what I wanted. If Arnie can do it, I can do it. Because the myth about why women couldn't be on the radio was we didn't have a big deep voice. Well, neither did Arnie, and everyone loved him. So I just kind of figured this guy is inspiring, and I want to follow in his steps. I didn't know him. He just sounded like he was having so much fun. And as a lonely kid growing up, I said to myself, if I could entertain, if I could make them feel better, that would be amazing. And the struggle I had to become one of the first women on the radio back then has been pretty well documented, so I won't bore your listeners, viewers with the details, but the bottom line is I got my start in college radio, and I was the first woman in the history of Northeastern University to ever be on the radio. And then I was one of the first just about every place I worked. And it's fascinating to having this conversation right now about sexual harassment and this and that with Harvey Weinstein, Donald Trump and this one and that one. That was culture back then. And it's sad to me that in 2017, it's still the culture. Unfortunately, I ran into a lot of that in the industry. I ran into a lot of guys that just thought they had every right to treat their female employees like, like little boys. In my case, harassing wasn't about, are you gorgeous? It was about power. And so, yes, I had some guys that thought that just because I was there, if I wanted to work for them, that gave them the right to put their hands on. And it was a real problem. And sad to say, it was a problem that most women encountered and nothing was ever done. So kind of like some of the other stuff in the industry, it wasn't just broadcasting, come on. This goes on way too often. But my point is, whatever industry you're in, it's kind of like deja vu all over again for people like me, like, God, this this in the 60s and 70s, you know, and it's still going on. Why? But there you go. So bottom line though, I was always different. I was different from what the girls were supposed to want to be. I was different from a lot of the people that got into radio. For example, I got into radio for the music. The thing that helped me big time was discovering Rush. Because once I discovered Rush, suddenly everybody liked me, you know? And before I was swine, but now I was like the swine that discovered Rush. So suddenly I was like, wow, I want to get to know Donna because she'll introduce us to Rush. I didn't always work out that way, but the fact remains that when you've done something that your peers regard as a good thing, it shifts people's attitudes. There probably are still a lot of people who think I'm, a jerk, I'm arrogant, I'm this and that. I don't know. But I do know that I've made a lot of friends as a result of doing Rush. And that's been a good thing.
To go back a little bit, as a media historian, by the time you got into radio, Professor Halper, a question I wanted to ask was several years earlier, what was the big issue of the payola scandal back then, and how did it exist when you started in radio as well too, and does it still exist today?
First of all, there has been payola since the early 1900s. Okay.
Right.
Same thing with payola. Used to be called plugola because back in the old days, the record promoters were called song pluggers. And song pluggers' job was to get a band, an orchestra, to play a particular song. Okay, everything was oriented towards songs. You kind of worked for the songwriters. And if you could get a big band, because this was the big band, if you could get a big band play your song, then it would be heard on the network and they'd say good things about it and you could get a plug, this and that. So it was that. But yeah, the fact remains, payola has changed over the years, okay? The way it's done has changed. Now it's, when I was getting into radio, it wasn't big bands because there wasn't the big band era anymore. It was the top 40 era and then the album rock era. So the people that did this were doing it to get radio stations to play their records as opposed to in the 30s and 40s when that's not what the case was, okay? So Alan Freed, God rest his soul, who was made to be the scapegoat for a lot of this, okay? And disclaimer, I knew his brother Lance. We were fairly friendly. Lance was a record promoter, and Lance told me his version of what had happened to Alan. And Alan Freed did some bad stuff. He took some money from from record promoters. He took what would probably be called bribes. Okay, fine. But him and everybody else, it was a very fast, loose time in the industry. And Top 40 was new, and record promoters were doing whatever they could to get an edge. I'm absolutely certain that Alan Freed was not the only person to take money from records. I'm also absolutely certain what Alan Freed said to Congress was true. What you call bribery, you could look at it as law. And the truth is, politicians take lobbying money every day. Okay, so this was really self-serving and really disingenuous. And the more I read about it, the more it makes my head hurt. Okay.
So with that, let me remind our viewers, we're speaking with Professor Donna Halper of Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, giving us a little history lesson on the inner workings of the radio business and the media business in general. And to continue real quick, before we get to the band you're most known for, as we talked a little bit about earlier, in case you're tuning in, Professor Halper, what other bands did you work with prior to working, or even during the first, we'll say 5 years of your career as a program director with, in addition to Rush? Who else did you work with that you had good experiences with?
Well, what I became known for, and by the way, since people are tuning in and tuning out, welcome to my exceedingly messy office, which I suppose I should have cleaned ahead of time, but I became known And it wasn't intentional, it just kind of fell that way. I became known for Canadian music. Okay, the fact that I discovered thrush was kind of not accidental. This is something that I became known for in college. I started playing Canadian bands. I don't know why. It wasn't intentional. I mean, I always liked the Guess Who. I thought the Guess Who were a really good band. I liked their music, you know. And so there were other bands, and record promoters started sending me stuff. When I got a job at a station called WCAS in Cambridge, I was still Cambridge, right where Leslie University. That's, you know, years ago. I didn't Leslie. I was just in, and there was this small station in Cambridge, and I was happy to have a job. And I got to play a lot of folk music, which I became known for. But also, like I said, record promoters could get in touch with me because they knew I was going to give their band some airplay. And I started playing Ray McLaughlin and Bruce Coburn and Baldy and Claire Lawrence. You've never heard of any of them. But my point is that up in Canada, these bands were respected, well known, and they didn't get any airplay in the States. So it was kind of nice to be able to introduce the audience to songs of the band, just what the Guess Who had top 40 hits. And I became playing folk and folk rock. If I named you a bunch of bands that I discovered, you'd be like, who? Because none of them really became nationally famous. But it was a fun time. You didn't just do it because you thought you'd discover bands and become famous. You did it because you believed in the music. In Cleveland, I worked and promoted, and I was not the only one to do this. My boss, John Borman, we also collaborated on this. It's a band called the Sensational Alex Harvey Band. Okay, they were kind of glam rock, and I loved Sensational Alex Harvey Band, and I really got behind them. Played a lot of their stuff. I had the privilege of meeting Alex when he came in Alex Harvey died very young, unfortunately, alcoholism. But when I met him, clean and sober, we had a great conversation. I wrote about it, this essay online, probably fine. But the Sensational Alex Harvey Band was huge in Cleveland. Nowhere else. Cleveland and Los Angeles. Everywhere else in the United States, if I say Sensational Alex Harvey Band 1970s, people are like, whoa. But in Cleveland, they were God. They were as big as Rush in the early days. People adored Sensational Alex Harvey, and it was a privilege to get behind them and promote their music. I miss Alex. I wish he had conquered his demons. I wish he was still with us. But for your fans, some Sensational Alex Harvey Band stuff is on the YouTubes, and it was an incredible opportunity. But see, that's something that radio did back. WMMS, well, we were known for my work with Rush. The station did a lot of stuff like that, okay? There was a song by Aerosmith called Dream On, which had died of painful death the first time it came out. It was not a hit. No one cared, Hope Young. And then John Gordon and Kid Leo and various other folks got behind it too, but I was not at this one. I was at the other stuff. But they got behind it, and you know what happened after. It became a humongous hit. It went back to the top of the charts and reinvigorated Aerosmith's career. And it was great to be doing stuff like that.
Okay, so Professor, we'll go to June 1974, May 1974. And,
ooh, the Rush Hour. Yes.
And the back.
Yes, indeed.
Your recollections and real quickly, your recollections you've had the band, and what do you think when you see that?
And I'll tell you what, that's not a humble brag. Okay, what you were pointing to is the American version of the album in a really bizarre shade of use. The original is in red. Correct. Got it? I will never part with it, no matter how bad my finances have ever gotten. The thought of selling that, no. I have to pry it out of my dead hands. That record, which was sent to me by Barbara, And as I said, this was not out of the blue. I had already made friends with Canadian record promoters. I'd been playing Canadian music since college. Okay. And when I was playing Rush, I never expected that they'd become the biggest hit. I would be lying if, oh yeah, I knew they'd have a star in the hall. No, I didn't. Um, yes, I thought they'd be something. Somebody found the notes I originally wrote on the record. And the notes were like, no, I think this band has potential, but I don't know if somebody isn't going to confuse them with Mahogany Rush. Because there was another band out at the same time that was from Montreal, and they were called Mahogany Rush. They were Canadian, blah, blah, blah. But I really thought the guys had something. I knew it the first time I heard it. Man, the story's been told a million times. I won't. But my point is, when I got behind and finding my way, all this other stuff, okay? When I got behind, I never expected, A, that they'd do as they did, or B, that we'd still be friends years later. I've done favors for a multitude of bands. The line forms, and this is not, isn't Donna marvelous? This is like, I was a music director, it's what I did. So when you're a music director or program director, you try to give bands exposure. And that's what I did. I gave bands exposure. Never thought another thing of it. In some cases, I would get beat. In other cases, not so much. In some cases, they'd be so friendly to me when they came to town. In other cases, don't you know who I am?
Right.
Yeah, I do know who you are.
So with that, between the first album, Donna, and the second one, so
Yeah,
recollections
but
of this.
That's the point I was getting to. I never expected that they would dedicate either album to me. Never expected it, okay? I mean, it's not something that, when you're a music director, you just do this stuff. And in many cases, I never heard of the bands again, and there you go. But that was fine. I mean, so when I gave Rush their exposure, to me, it was that I did that. Okay? It was like, here's a Canadian band. Nobody up in Canada is playing their music. They've got a lot of talent. I should play them. I should get my other the DJs on the staff to play them, and we'll see what happens. And if nothing happens, at least I know I did.
Awesome.
And when I spoke to their manager, and it turned out that, oh, what a nice bunch of people. And when I got to meet them, oh, these guys are great. But I still never expected that when the American version of that record came, people asked me, did you get a finder's fee? No, I got a 40-year friendship. How lucky am I? Okay, so yeah, they dedicated the first two albums to me. Never expected either case. And it's one of those things that is so typical of the guys, okay? But as a music director, honest to God, I can't tell you how many bands I've gotten behind, never gotten so much as a thank you. But this proves, once again, what special Rush are and how compassionate, how unusual they are. Because let's be honest, this is an industry with big egos, okay? Oh, I don't know if we're going to put you on the guest list. You're important enough to be at our concert. I don't know if we'll give you an blah, blah, blah. And there's just a lot of that out there. Rush were never like that. When they were just about nobody, they were courteous. When they were just about the most famous band out there, they were courteous. This is just our success never sport. And that's something that, again, I had no way of knowing that when I championed their music.
Right.
But boy, it sure did turn out well, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Donna, two more questions before I let you go. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. But I got to ask you this. To quote the Buggles, did video kill
by the way, you probably don't, I talk with my hands a lot. It's an epic.
Oh, that's okay. Did video kill the radio star and at the advent of MTV?
No. That's the short answer. No. I'm a big fan of a media theorist named Neil Postman, Postman. Neil Postman, God rest his soul. Neil wrote a wonderful book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, Television, the Age of Show Business. I have it right at the side. I could probably reach for it, except then I'd go off camera and that would be useful. But here's the deal. Neil Postman belonged to a school of thought called media ecology. And media ecology teaches that media create an environment. They create a culture, okay? So in that school of thought, it teaches that new technologies do not eradicate previous technologies, but they do change them, okay? So when television came along, everybody predicted that was the end of radio. So what did radio have? Radio had to reinvent itself. Top 40, the transistor, teenagers, let's go after the kids, fast talking DJs. And that changed because the society was changing due to the Vietnam War, civil rights movement, women's rights, gay rights. Change yourself again, become album rock. Start talking about the issues that matter in a way the top 40 couldn't. Okay, fine. Then along comes the internet. Oh my God, what'll we do? We're all going to get eradicated. Now you have TV stations and radio stations with websites. Now you have TV, radio broadcasting online. I'm sitting in my office at home right now, watching me, and none of this is impossible. And yet, as Neil Postman said, all of the technology that existed before, the content on YouTube comes from television and radio. The content on many websites comes from newspapers and magazines. So it's just new technologies reinventing themselves. What video did was it killed the dominance of the radio star. So radio used to be the dominant media. Now it's one of a number of media. People have choices. People have different places they can get their music, get their personality, get their whatever. Okay? Before, there were a limited number of choices. But a culture expands. So we now have a different culture, a different life where I got tons of choices if I want my music. I've got tons of choices if I want my interviews and news and whatever. But by and large, even the Telegraph wasn't really eradicated. The Telegraph kind of lives on as Twitter. Because the Telegraph got like 15. Twitter got 140 characters, or new style 280, but it's still a limit on how many words you can send, so you gotta be concise. That's just one type of communication. So yeah, now we've got all different kinds, and video did was it shifted people's expectations. But video killed the power of imagination. I no longer have to imagine what Val looks like. I can just, wow, oh my God, so that's what Val looks like. Oh my God, so that's what Donna looks like, etc., etc. Radio created all kinds of scenarios that you had to imagine what it was like. There's this great film by Woody Allen. I'm generally not a Woody Allen fan. It's just not my director. His favorite movie is that he did something called The Rose of Cairo. And if you haven't seen it, it's a great movie, The Rose of Cairo. But his up movie that I liked was called Radio Days. And they're related. They're like a part of a trilogy about how each mass media had a role in his life growing up. The Purple Rose of Cairo, he's not in, is about the power of movie and how even during the Depression, would save up their pennies so that they could go to a matinee and just for a couple of hours just be taken away to an amazing world with amazing people doing amazing things. Radio was like that. And there's this great scene in Radio Days where our hero goes to meet, Captain whoever, the famous hero who flies through the air, rescuing humanity. I forget the name of the character, but you get the general idea. And the kid goes to the studio to meet Captain whoever and finds it's a short, chubby guy who's kind of bald and doesn't look like Captain whoever at all. But in his imagination, that kid imagined that, oh my God, the guy looks like, he's got muscles. He's like a wrestler. He can, beat down the bad guys. And that's what we've lost. We've lost our ability to imagine. Kids growing up now, spelled out for them, they virtual reality. And I'm not that person on the lawn shaking my fist and going, all you kids get off. I understand, as Neil Postman said. People change, times change, media changes. Well, change we all do. But I still think it's that kids have a much more time imagining. They want it spelled out. They want to see it in front of them. They want to text it. They want, they prefer virtual to actually going out and creating it. And yes, there is still creativity going on. There are still great songs being written. There are still great videos. Video did not kill the radio star. It just changed the radio star. And today, thanks to the new technology, radio stars can be video stars. And we're all just kind of living in a world where it's a multimedia world, and you either adapt to it or you get forgotten about.
And one more question, I got to ask you this because I would think that you have been asked, I would imagine. What's your opinion on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And would you consider an offer to be on their committee ever?
They'd never ask.
Is that
no,
so?
They wouldn't. They would not. Because by and large, the people that are on the committee tend to be rock journalists, or they tend to be people that have been involved in the record biz. I'm neither. Yes, I'm a writer. Yes, I've written 6 books and a ton of articles and et cetera and et cetera.
Which is why I asked you that.
I have not specifically made my living as a rock journalist. So it's not that they're discriminating against me. They have certain things they're looking for. I've never been a working musician. I've never been a rock journalist. The chances of my getting on that committee, non-existent.
Wow.
That having been said, one of the things that got Rush in was the changing of the guard.
Right.
Was the fact that a lot of the older critics, and I've talked about this, the older critics, they grew up in a world where for them, Rush was derivative, it was like the poor person's Led Zeppelin,
Right.
They were bombastic, I can show you reviews, you'll sit there. But the younger critic, they didn't grow up with that at all. They grew up with wow, these guys are really good, I really like them. And as soon as the guard started changing, I knew that it would just be a matter of time before Rush got in. So yeah, was I frustrated? Were many fans frustrated that we spent so many years making the case for this band? You don't know how many times behind the scenes I worked on people that I knew were on that committee. Couldn't, no, lots of nothing. But there again, trying, and sooner or later, people catch up and they look at people that they could have done and go, oh, why isn't Rush? There's a bunch of bands where you're like, why aren't we in? But once the new judges came along, Rush was in, and they should have been in. The end, full stop, we're done, So that was taken care of. I'm delighted. And fans feel a sense of appreciation about that too.
Absolutely.
The guys, the fact that they weren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame did not ruin their lives, upset their serenity a bit. But it was nice recognition from their pews. And once they realized they were inducted, Getty's mom just thrilled, and I'm up against the cast. I was with her. Okay, she had tears in her. She was so happy for her son. As a Yiddish expression, she was spelling Kvelling, beaming with pride. Okay, my son's inductee. It was amazing. Glad I could be there for it. I really can't complain. The industry has changed a lot.
Well, I think that's the point, though.
I can get back in a radio tomorrow. I'd be back in. But I can't. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm working as a professor. I get to talk to nice people like you. I get to talk about various and sundry things. Life ain't so bad.
Donna, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure and an honor to speak to you. And as far as I'm concerned, we only scratched the surface, so you're always welcome on this
I just
station.
hope I wasn't bored.
No.
I worry about stuff like
No,
that.
you're always welcome on this show, like I said, and I thank you so much for your time. And we've
Thank
definitely,
you for having me. I appreciate it.
and we'll definitely continue the conversation, hopefully in the near future.
Thanks an awful lot.
Take care. Bye-bye.